Hi, I'm Moaj Lali, President of Mindful Leader and your host for the Mindfulness at Work Online Summit. For this session, we'll be talking to Daniela Labra. Daniela Labra, General Director of a Mexican nonprofit AtentaMente. She is a biologist and former university teacher who has trained for 20 years in contemplative Buddhist practice and has been teaching meditation for more than 10 years. With AtentaMente, her effort has focused on sharing mind training techniques in a secular context, mainly in education, but also in the government, private leadership sectors, as well as the general public. Welcome, Daniela.
Thank you, Mo. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening.
I'm so excited to have you, and I think our audience is going to be so inspired and educated by what you have to share. But before we jump into the meat of this session, I'd love to just have you give us a glimpse into your personal life and briefly share how you got started with meditation.
Thank you. Well, I am Mexican, born and raised in Mexico City, lived here most of my life. And I studied biology, and I got sidetracked, I would say, from my biology training and PhD studies because of Buddhism. It kind of flipped my world around, and I found contemplative practices a much more interesting way to assess consciousness, which was my field of interest from the beginning. And in that way, I'd rather be a guinea pig in the Shamatha project that UC Davis developed, a longitudinal focused attention training research project in which Alan Wallace was guiding, and my main teacher here in Mexico, Tony Karam from Casa Tibet, had introduced us to retreat and meditation in a very thorough way. So that really became the focus of my life for many years, I must say. I was a university teacher, but my interest was very much into my contemplative training, my practice. I then went to train in Tibetan language, so I also speak Tibetan. I'm an interpreter. But finally, in 2011, when His Holiness Dalai Lama visited Mexico, and he gave a very interesting talk to the Teachers Union. And that moment was very amazing for me because it brought together the things that were really in my heart always. So it was contemplative training, science, and education. So those three things came together very clearly when he was asking teachers that they should really train their heart and that we should all educate for well-being. So at that point, it was very clear that I wanted to bring all these things that I've learned, not just from these teachers, Tony and Alan Wallace, I mentioned, but also from all my Tibetan teachers, that it was very clear that we had to offer the world more of what we had learned and what Buddhism had developed in terms of mind training. Because working with mind, working with the skill of well-being, enhancing those mind patterns and emotions that help us and reducing those that don't, I think that we had in mind training and the Buddhist mind training a very clear way of going about this. So that was this is my opportunity. This is my life's calling to bring these things together. So that is what got us into building, or we founded AtentaMente, to, as you have shared in my bio, to be able to share these techniques in a secular context and completely based on science, what we could really relate to science and what we knew, and developing a very good theory of change of how you go about developing your social emotional skills.
Wow, beautiful. And for me, I'm so excited. When I first learned about AtentaMente and the work that you guys had done, it was almost like it had to be repeated to me. I was like, really? That's happening? How is that happening? And just to share with our audience, and I'll let you get into the details a little bit. I mean, AtentaMente, you guys are working across the board, but it's really the work that you're doing around education that I think is going to be, with the time we have together, what we could explore. And my understanding, and again, I'd love for you to fill in the blanks and explain a little further, but basically you guys have been able to deliver meditation, mindfulness training and to the entire school system of Mexico. And I don't think there's anyone out there in any country that could claim to do that. And I'm so excited to be part of getting your story out there, because I just feel like so many people will get so inspired by it. And so if you could kind of flesh that out a little bit more to help our audience understand what AtentaMente has been able to accomplish, and then I'd love to jump into the details.
Of course. Well, what we have been able to do is I think it was causes and conditions, and I think the Mexican Ministry of Education and the Mexican society really did like a jump start, or really like spearheaded introducing social emotional learning into the whole curriculum from pre-K to K-12 as a mandatory part of the curriculum. So that really like pushed or opened up the field for us to come forth and say, well, we have been developing for a few years, programs to train these skills, but of course with a method, because I'm not saying, of course, there are many amazing ways to do it, but we had found that the contemplative piece of really training your attention and being able to regulate your emotions through contemplative training, or just mind training, I would say, I think that brought in an added value, right? So we were bringing something in that would allow you to work with the how. So we had this developed, and in this coincidence, or just causes and conditions that got us into this project on the Ministry of Education, then we were able to participate in the development of the curriculum from pre-K to K-12, and very specifically and thoroughly in K-10 to K-12, we have been training, not only developing the curriculum and each part of it and each lesson that the kids are doing or the teens are doing in school, we have also been able to train the teachers. So we have trained 50,000 teachers up till now. We have 200,000 that can go into the online training we've developed. We will reach those 200,000, hopefully. We've reached 50,000 now. This will impact 4.5 million children, well, teens particularly. So we are in 12,000 schools. So it's a really, really huge project. And one of the things that we have been really happy to say is that we got attention as a central piece from pre-K to K-12, as a central piece of what needs to be educated. You need to train attention to be able to learn anything. And we need to train attention, of course, if we want to develop self-knowledge and self-regulation and empathy, and to better be able to do this, right? So attention became a centerpiece of our proposal. And now all kids in Mexico will receive some sort of attention training from pre-K to K-12. So this is what we're doing now. And this is what we've had the fortune to be part of, this movement that has allowed us to bring in a very clear theory of change in terms of how you train. You actually go about training those skills and changing your habits through a consistent and focused training to do so. And I think this is what has brought us, or given us the opportunity to be where we are. So as you say, we're spearheading this development of the social emotional learning component in all of the nationwide in Mexico.
Wow. And I'm curious I could imagine, this is so exciting. It's got to be in some ways a dream come true, and just who would have thought? And I could imagine how much excitement there is around it, but it also sounds incredibly difficult to create this program, to roll it out. And I'm curious if you could walk us through some of how this came together and how you were able to bring the pieces together, everything from the actual training, the curriculum, to the delivery, and any of the challenges along the way.
Wow, well, so what we had when this project came in and we won a bidding to actually develop this, what we had already developed a training for adults in which we had a piece, the curriculum, that was really focused on to really assess the importance of mind in our relationship with the world and our experience of well-being. So that's like one of the first things we go and work with. And then we train attention, then we work with emotions, and finally we work with enhancing the positive qualities of kindness and compassion. So this is like I would say a 4-piece part, or maybe a 3-piece part, being calm, kind, clear, and calm, we would say. So we had developed this before. We had been working with schools, we had been working with teenagers, and as you mentioned, we had been working with the government and government officials and directors and mid-management and government offices. And so when this came in, we already had a program. But of course, matching with federal education in a completely and very, very adamantly secular context, which I think is the way it should be. Mexican education in the Constitution by law has to be lay, which I totally adhere to and we totally adhere to. So coming together with, we had to strengthen our pedagogical skills. We had to develop online content, which we had never done. So we really needed to broaden and bring expertise into our team. So this was one important part, I think. Bring other expertise that we were missing. We had the people, we had already been training instructors, and we had the luck, of having a lot of our friends wanting to move into helping the broader society with what we had benefited from our own mind training. So we have a team of around 50 instructors that had been training their own minds for at least 4 years. So this gave us an added value of people who really knew what they were doing in terms of their own mind. Or, well, I don't know if we really know what we're doing, but we're always trying. At least we had the experience in that sense. And so that is what we already had. We had a curriculum, we had the team. And because I am a teacher in training, and my husband, who's also the curricular director of AtentaMente, he's been studying pedagogy, he's a physicist and teaching for many years. So we had pedagogy already, of course, in what we offered. So when we came to the bidding, we already had these developments, and then we had to adjust. And we had to work with others in the field, which was amazing. And we learned so much from other experts in the fields, from other approaches. But we had the fortune that we were really spearheading the development of the whole pre-K to K-12, just like the generality from pre-K to K-10. And we were very respected in that we were really advanced in what we had developed as a curriculum. We had research, because we have been working with Richie Davidson from the University of Wisconsin. So we also had research on what we had been doing. And I think that all of those things, that we had science-based curriculum, good instructors, and a development. And this curriculum had been tested, I must say, not so thoroughly as it is now, but definitely tested. That got us the buy-in, that we could win this bidding, and then started working with other experts in the field. So it was actually pretty intense. I was talking to you about this before. The challenge is that we're a really small group after all, and we had to grow very fast in terms of bringing the team together, and not only grow very fast, but really enhance our quality of everything we did. Went through a lot of revision. In the government, in the ministry, we're also working this project for high schools. Is within it's a joint project between the Ministry of Education and UNDP, so the United Nations Development Program. So we had reviewers from UNDP, from the ministry, going through every single word we wrote or said, which of course made us grow and made us be much more precise and made us really think very thoroughly. It was very clear for us from the very beginning that many people would not be doing maybe the mind training so much. So when the title of this talk and say how to take mindfulness into a nationwide program, I would say without mindfulness. What do I mean by that? That we really needed to be very clear about what we were offering, what we were saying that needed to be done. So we really had to talk about focused attention, particularly, and analytical mind training, which is something that from our background is very much in our training from Tibetan Buddhism, from the Gelug side of it. We had a lot of analytical training. So we had to bring in very much of the view. So we knew people would not necessarily be doing like formal training, though we do have this as a suggestion for teachers. Teachers love it. The kids are loving it too. But we had to really bring in the view, the theory, why we had to do this.
Absolutely. And Danielle, before you go too further, there's a couple of things I'm curious to explore a little bit deeper, and then we'll jump back in. And one thing I'm curious about, you mentioned the instructors. They had 4 years experience meditating and doing exploration. What were some other things that you look for in an instructor, just to give people a sense of, you know, the sort of criteria or what the kind of makeup is of a good instructor?
I think when we began, our main criteria was motivation. I mean, this experience, we needed people with meditative experience. So we have received, like here, we had the joy and fortune of having received, all of us shared most of our training. And so we trained very closely with, as I said, Tony Karam as our main teacher here, but Alan Wallace's program, we all went through it, in which we had very thorough training in shamatha, very thorough training in the four immeasurables, very thorough training in for close applications of mindfulness, which is, I think, that would be the most common thing in mindfulness movement, as I understand, in terms of practice. And we had, I think, the complete conviction that we wanted to help others. So I think that has been the main glue, to bring us together. Like, we really want to help. We really want to be of benefit to the broader world. Wow. So this, I think, was our first, requisite. Like, you need to have trained your mind, and you need to have this motivation. And then we went through this 1.5 years training. Sometimes our friends in the US go like, really? People do like all of that, and so many hours you ask from people. And I think we have been very fortunate of having people who really were, and there still are. I think, motivation has helped us go through so much work, so much stress, so much difficulty. It's been a difficult project in terms of work. But I think for us, this has really helped us a lot in terms of instructors. I must say, I think that people in AtentaMente would generally tend to give more than other people would do in a work circumstance. I think that has, and that is carried, and it's not that I'm saying it's necessarily healthy to overwork the way we've had to, but I think that always coming back to, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We're doing this to help. And I think people have found a lot of value for themselves in their life, meaningful life that we want to do. So we want to live, and I think that meaning for us has really been the core. And trying to, and then of course instructors need to be, not only have this, but of course have the ability to stand there before a general public and to be very thorough in what you're communicating, and be able to link with science and with the research we've done. And of course, there's so much good research out there. No, we're not researchers. But I think that the commitment to their own training, and then we've had to work with them as instructors, as people who stand there for 150 teachers in our in-person training. And I think that's what we've asked from our instructors.
Wow. That's great. So people, they had this deep practice, this conviction, and an ongoing practice, and just the ability to present and really the skills in doing that. You also mentioned that there was a point that you started to engage experts in the field. And I was curious if you could elaborate a little bit more. Is this the field of mindfulness, the field of education? You mentioned Richie Davidson. I know that you guys are working with just incredible people like Otto Schumer and Peter Senge. If you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, I think in terms of, let's say, mindfulness or mind training, we were definitely the experts in that. I mean, but we had to bring in, like you say, advisors into how to really develop this in a bigger way. We had a leadership piece for our teacher training. So we started training with Peter Senge and Otto Scharmer and working with them and how do we go about this, because we thought that the whole piece of systems leadership and leadership as they presented is very aligned with this, of course, internal work, working with yourself and working with others. And so we started working with them. Richie was our advisor, and not just in the research piece, but also, of course, in the theoretical part of how we understand emotions and how we work with emotions. And we had to talk with other scientists like James Gross, who has a model of emotional regulation. We had to also bring in curricular developers, people who could check that what we were doing would be very well worded in the pedagogical sense, that we were communicating properly with the education system. We also had to bring in script writers for our online training. And, so these kind of expertise we had to bring in, I would say mostly in the curriculum development, like helping us, like really, we're looking for the English word, really like polish what we were doing, and all these advisors to really help us check that what we were doing was correct, it was theoretically correct, and that we were really walking in the correct way. So that those I would say would be the main expertise. And let me tell you also, even experts in writing, like we were not necessarily writers, and we were scripting and we were writing a curriculum. So expert writers, proofreaders, all of this kind of expertise had to come in.
Excellent. So I'd like to allow you to jump back in where you were in discussing how this program was being adapted for the government. And I've done some government work before, and I know that there's so much bureaucracy, there's so many rules. If you don't check this, or if you don't say it this way, then you have to start all over again. So I could imagine what that process was like.
Yes, we're still doing it. The program is still, we're still developing. And that I think has been, we started developing last year, and this was in the schools already in January, and it's in the schools now, and people are using it now. So but like you say, there's so much to adjust, and that's been very interesting, that we have to, and that has, as I say, if we can learn as a movement of people who have learned all these techniques that have benefited us, I think that if we can learn to really speak this language and really be very clear about what we're presenting and the science behind it, and I think that really gives people the confidence to try it. Because I think there is a lot, I guess it's a little different in Mexico than the US. I think also the mindfulness movement over there has a long history already, and it's very, it's everywhere, and it's starting here, not so much. Still, it's starting in Mexico. So I think we're very, very interested in really saying this is serious work. Because people can get all sorts of ideas about, this is like a quick fix, or this is like, people say, you're going to meditate and like look into the sky. And I don't know, the things that people think about it. And we have really had to be very kosher, I say, very clean, and saying, this is really some knowledge that's been developed, that's been studied, that is useful for you. And people, once they have the confidence, will try it. And we had no pushback from government, no pushback from the ministry now in education, because I think that they have no feeling of us trying to, convert anybody into any ideology. And it's a very thorough self-awareness, self-research method, that can be, of course, held by our current neuroscience knowledge or current psychological knowledge, cognitive science. So I think that is very important.
Excellent. Daniela, can you paint for us a picture of how does this look like in terms of, when you guys deliver? Is it at the school level? Is it the teachers? Is it the students? Just to give our audience a sense of what this actually looks like in terms of the delivery.
So I'm going to focus on the K-10 to K-12 piece. So the delivery went in this way. First, we trained for each of the schools. We had one principal and one tutor, which I would say is more like a peer, like the champion for that CEL program, who was a teacher who's not tutoring the kids, but actually working with his peers, his peer teachers. So we had principals and teachers in an in-person training, a 12-hour in-person training. So at that point, we were really like opening up the whole, what was this all about, right? So what is social emotional learning? Why train attention? Why train your emotions? Why work with that? So this, and giving them an in-person experience. We had this fortune of having people there. So trying, discussing between them, mindful listening, mindful talking, things that were really a very nice, dive into the program. After that, we went into doing an online training for the teachers while we were developing the lessons. So what we did for the K-10 to 12 is develop lessons. So they have, for 12 weeks, they have one lesson per week. But we had to do variations in each lesson. So each kid would be getting 6 different classes, right? So the math teacher and the science teacher and the Spanish teacher. Right? So each of those teachers has to bring in and work for an assigned period to work for 40 minutes with a lesson. So if I am a student and all my teachers were doing what they should do, I would be receiving 40 minutes from one teacher, 40 minutes from another. 20 minutes, 20 minutes from each of my teachers, right? So in the end, if I were getting what I should, I would be getting 2 hours a week of social emotional learning. So what we did in terms of curriculum is that we had one topic. Let's say if we're working with attention. So the topic was attention for the week, but we did 6 different variations on the topic. So the kid would be receiving 6 different approaches to the same topic each week.
And Danielle, can I interrupt for just one quick second? Just want to make sure I understand this. So the teachers, regardless of discipline, the math teacher, the science teacher, the English teacher, everyone was incorporating this into their lessons. It wasn't just one teacher, say the health and wellness person, it was everyone.
That's everyone. So that has been, that structure actually was proposed to us by the head of the Ministry of Education, the head of the program. She said, we need to do this. We need to go as broad as we can. That there was no particular time for the K-10 to K-12 kids to work with this, like a separate tutoring time or social emotional period. We had no particular time. So then the teachers, all of them, had to take it in. So that has been a really big challenge. It still is. I think that's a particular process. Of course, many teachers would say I don't know how to do this, and why should I do this? And but I think the other bet that came from ministry, but came from us, is saying if the teacher has to do it, even though they're not working on their own about it, because they have to prepare the class, they'll come in the classroom and they'll start learning with the kids, right? They don't have much of a choice, So then, what we have found, so they got the lessons, and each teacher got this 12 lessons, and the other teacher his other 12 lessons, and they just had to jump in the classroom and work with the kids. But what we found, because after the online training, we started doing online coaching for the tutors, right? And first we thought, nobody's going to join in. There's 6,000 of them. We're going to have a few of them interested. And as of now, we have 4,000 online, and we have like a 70% interest. I mean, there's 70% of them like really participating. They are the tutors working with their peers, so they're letting us know what's happening, not just for them, but for their peers in the classrooms. And there is a very, very good reception because the kids are loving it. The teens are really loving it because they're thinking about their identity, because they're thinking about their emotions. They're thinking about things that they really care about. And it's so important for them. So that they are receiving it very well. I mean, we don't have the data from research yet, we need the data, but at least of what you're hearing, So we had the in-person training for teachers, online training, then this coaching, online coaching, and the lessons being already delivered. So even if you didn't get any of that, you had your lesson, you had to walk in the classroom. And we are working in some here in Mexico City. We're also doing like more thorough pilot programs, pilot in schools that may have 6,000 teens at a time. The schools here are huge, public schools. But what we are doing as part of our team is coaching coaches to be in the school, just be available for the teachers and just answer their questions and be there for them. So that's a pilot piece. And we know from other social emotional programs that this is really important, but it's very hard to do that nationwide. Very, very costly, right? But we are piloting this in wanting this to be able to be replicated further.
Wow. And I'm curious, a couple of questions come up for me. One is the sense of the lessons being sort of standard lessons delivered nationwide, and just knowing how large Mexico is and just the diversity and, how different locales might interact with it and have to work within their student population. Curious if you could talk a little bit about that.
I think what we have seen, as I said, like we are in the 32, Mexico is composed of 32 states. So we have teachers that are in a program in the 32 states. So we have had, of course, there's different involvement in different states. As we know, just this is the data we have. But we have not had any, as of now, particular pushback in terms of cultural diversity that we have a lot in Mexico. Some states could be other countries. But we have not had until now. That has not been a particular problem. What we do find is that there are places that are very violent or very poverty-stricken, and the conflict is really intense there. And I think in that way, the teachers are also finding this very important because they see the difficulty and they're already saying, like, what do we do when the child breaks down and starts crying? And, we need to, there will be things coming up, and there are. But I think they also see the value in this, because helping kids have a safe space and have better relationships and being able to know what they're feeling and better able to communicate that. I think the value is so clear for most teachers that they can see that they actually, one of the main complaints is like, kids really love this. It's taken us much more than 20 minutes, we need more time for this. Yeah. So I'm not saying there are no challenges. I think we don't have enough information to know exactly or precisely what you're asking. But we have not had, in this general approach where we're at, we have not had a particular, like a very big disparity that we're noting.
And I'm curious how, with these teachers, and because there's so many teachers involved and they're all delivering in all these different ways, is there a way of knowing if they're actually delivering or what the quality is in terms of just measuring the impact?
So that's part of our bidding had like curriculum development, teacher training, and research. So as of now, like of course, when you have a program that's so big, you cannot have everybody, but like in any research, right? You have to do a baseline. Now take I'm missing the English word. You can't have everyone, so you take
sample.
Thank you. You gave me the word. So you have to have a sample. So we have a baseline, and the main research, and this was something that also we were also working with Richard Selman, with Robert Selman from Harvard. So of course we were really told, like, the first thing you have to research is implementation. So are the teachers doing it? How much are they, the fidelity, are they doing it as told? So that is what we're measuring now. So hopefully in a few months we will have results that I can share with you guys in terms of what really happened. Now we only have the qualitative information of what we're being told, but we still do not have the data, but it will be there because we have done the research.
Excellent. I'm curious, as far as some of the major challenges that came up throughout this program, if you could just that look on your face, I could imagine just when we first engaged, it was right as the program was winding down a little bit, and I remember just how it looked like it was quite a bit of effort. And so I'm curious if you could share some of the challenges that you went through and how that might inform our audience if they should face similar challenges.
Yes, I think maybe the first challenge was that, I mean, in terms of people suddenly finding ourselves a very small group of people, finding ourselves with a very big project in a very short time. So the first challenge was just organizing oneself to get there, and really, even for me, maybe, I don't know the rest, but, being confronted, but can we do it? I mean, we're there, now we have to, but it was like a very steep beginning, in terms of getting the team together and working at the speed we needed to be working, with the ministry, which is, I don't think it's the best strategy, but that's how it's been working here. Like, we need to have this in 3 months, and you're like, wow, the time frame, I think, was the biggest challenge. And having to really work much harder than you've been working before, really, like you had quality, but you needed to, upgrade very fast. I think it was challenging as a team because it gets so much stress in there, and you're, well, we all know this, yes, you're trying to keep calm and have a more stable stance. But of course, when you're so stressed, many just personal things you become more reactive. We all know that. So that was a challenge. And just, I guess getting everything to work together, timely, quality. We were being asked to do everything in a very short time with a very high quality. And that made us grow. It was a challenge, but now I can smile about it. Maybe if you asked me a few months ago, I would have not been so optimistic. And the challenge also for us, I think, was in terms of our own ideas, saying we really need to give others what is useful, not necessarily what we would want to do, like fully what we might find so more important. But we say we really have to talk to the audience, and we really have to give them what will help them. And we have to acknowledge that they may not want to sit every day and train their mind, right? So we need to give them different opportunities of training their attention consistently throughout the day with the reminders, the stop, take a break, take a breath, remember what you want, come back. And give them, as I said, like the view, if you can think about relating to your emotions as processes that are changing, you are not them, that you can observe them, that you can let them go. Those things that are actually from the view, like the way you address or relate, maybe they won't be sitting, but we really think that thinking about their emotions in this way, just as an example, is very helpful. Knowing that, being adverse to your own pain and your own stress is not going to solve it. So rather just say, okay, I am stressed, I am tired, I'm going to take some time, and accept that this is what's happening and try to relax. Even if, of course, we completely always say, if you do the training, you will be as a muscle, you have stronger muscle to be able to do it. But if you don't want to train, at least keep the idea of this. And I think this has a very strong protective piece and helpful piece for teachers. Just working with the fact of saying, It's not the world, it's the way you're relating to the world that is so important in your experience of well-being. So, look into your mind, work with your thoughts, work with yourself. And I think this is a very strong thing and very, very helpful for people. And it's very logical in a way for all. I mean, of course, some people don't like it, but I think for the vast majority we've met, at least, or what we've been receiving from our side, this is really something useful, and they're saying, why didn't we learn this before? And the kids should know this. And I think that giving them or sharing what is most useful, instead of trying to say everybody should sit and meditate every day. We'd love that, but it may just not happen, right? So what can we be? How can we be helpful? So I think that was a challenge because one has our own, internal, but if they don't do this, it's not going to, we really want people to sit, basically.
Every day you have to meditate 2 hours in a 10-day silent meditation retreat every year minimum. I completely could relate to that. Yeah. And Daniela, in the time that we have remaining, I'm curious if you could share what's next for AtentaMente. I know you guys are doing some fantastic work, and just give our audience a sense of what's going on now and what you guys are up to.
So now we're developing an online training for pre-K principals. We really also had a big donation to do that, and we're trying, and of course, first infancy is so important, if you can do the building blocks right there. So we've got a strong, a lot of our time and effort is going into that, but of course into how to make this stay. How can we, okay, this is what we got the bidding, it's a good opportunity, and now what? How can we have continuity in what we're doing? How can we expand this to other areas, other people, other teams, the private sector, but just in general, because we have elections and things may change. Things can change radically more than one may think they can. So things may change. We don't really know. In Mexico, that political arena is kind of unstable, can impact the education sector pretty strongly. So we're really thinking, how do we really, once we've advanced in this, it doesn't matter if it's the new reform or the old reform or what, this is something valuable for people in general. So we're trying to really make alliances and work with the education sector and with the private sector, and just we want to publish our work. We want to be there, talking to people. Our main bet really is this is helpful for you. If you learn this will help your life. And I think that's what we call the silver bullet, the one piece that's not learn a new way of teaching math. This is learn a new way of being better, of having more well-being, of having a more satisfying life. So that's what we're trying. We're trying to publish, expand into other arenas, and just try to keep the word going in the education sector. This is what we want, even though somebody comes and thinks of new curriculum, what have you. Social emotional learning is the crux. It's crucial. It should not be left behind.
Wow. This has been fantastic. And as we come to close and to wrap up here, where can we point people to learn more about AtentaMente and learn more about what you guys are up to?
Yes, I'd love to. Well, of course, if people are interested, you can go to our webpage, AtentaMente.mx, and work with the high school from K10 to K12. You can go to the ministry's webpage, which is also something that makes us very proud. It's an open source, so anybody can have access. If you go in there, you can find the English version of the page, not of all the lessons, but of the page, so you know more or less how it's structured. Construyete, it's called Build Yourself. That's a program. So Build Yourself, Construyete. And you can go there and you will see as an open source all that we've done. We didn't produce the online training, but we did all the contents. And I'd love, if people are interested, we'll always be happy to. We have our Facebook, AtentaMente MX again. So Facebook and our Twitter and our online webpage and the Construyete webpage. So please, if anybody's interested, and of course, we're always available. I am. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniela, for being part of this and joining us today. This has been really great.
Thank you, Mo. I hope this is helpful, and I'll be happy to be available for anybody who wants more information about this.
Absolutely. I think this is fantastic. Folks will be able to, just knowing what you guys are doing, I think is just incredibly inspiring, and getting some details into how it will be very valuable. And we're coming to a close for this session. I'm Mo Ijlali once again. Thank you for joining us for the Mindfulness at Work Summit. See you on the next one.